My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm continuing Mahan's teaching the I God philosophy, but today we are exploring the mind of a Mahan. And in the last satsang, I spoke about the different stages of Mahans and the questions that he had in his mind as he was in the journey towards seeking enlightenment. So Mahan went through various stages of evolution. His mind went through various stages of evolution, and we spoke about the questions. I want to go a little bit more, probe a little bit more deeper on Mahan's, mindset, how he was, and how he was able to develop a mindset that became more and more universal. I start off with the three questions that Swamiji had. In terms of hunger, the hunger for food, hunger for conjugal relationships, and hunger for who we are and what we are. So in Tamil, he says, Kudal Pasi, Udal Pasi, Ullatin Pasi. The first two are very easy to meet, those requirements in acquiring food and overcoming that pang of hunger, food, and relationships. But the third one requires a fair bit of intensity. There's not an object-driven, approach. It has to be a subject-driven, and that's what we covered the last time. So, and Swamiji did, write in the book that during this period he had lots of questions, and through deep meditation, introspection, contemplation, reflection, he was able to unlock the secrets of the universe around him, and he was able to find some of the answers to the questions that he had. And he says that finally he realized what he was searching, and he says that last he was able to understand what this is, and he documented all this journey in his book called I God. So I stopped at this the last time, but I want to take you a little bit more deeper into this Mahan's mindset. So the evolution of the mind of Mahan, and we see that there are four stages that Swamiji went through, and that four stages were as follows. We see that in the first stage, Swamiji had a lot of questions, in his early stages of his pursuit. At the age of 11 years old, he had questions on who is the creator. And, since then, he started introspecting everything, observing everything very, very carefully, the things around him, the experiences he was getting, the relationships. He started contemplating very deep, where does this all come from? And he was also reflecting his own life, his own life experiences. And he did all kinds of, spiritual practices. He asked a lot of people lots of questions. And the one burning question he had in him is that who is the creator? And he wanted to know the creator. And he was searching for this intensively. And this progressed further. And then he met a guru, a master who taught him that, he had this question, how do I realize the creator in me? And this is where he started contemplating in the first part, where when he observed very carefully, he realized that if everything is created by the creator, I am also part of that creation. And if the creator created everything, it must be a substance from him, the creator itself. And the question then, which was started off with external, started going deeper within himself. And he says that there must be some clues that the creator must have left within me, that to realize the creator itself. And he moved from that external introspection, contemplation, and reflection. He started going deep. And he started doing all kinds of practice until uh, an elderly person showed him how to make his mind more quieter, how to anchor his mind into that inner vibration. And this is when, in 1938, Swamiji, started going much more deeper in his meditation from external to internal, that intensive tapas or inner exploration. And over the period of time, as he was going through this inner exploration, he discovered, the power of the Muladharam, the base eye, the third eye, the nape, and also the crest eye. And he started doing a lot of experimentation, being able to document all the experiences, what happens when he started practicing raising the Kundalini, the sense of clarity that he got by practicing the forehead eye, the sense of good memory and vision of things, as this energy flow passed through the spinal cord to the nape eye, and finally that the interplay between the nape eye and also the third eye, one is giving him awareness, the other one is, deepening the memories and the experiences and unlocking the various memories that were stored in by nature itself. And as he was able to understand things better, he was able to move that energy to the crest eye that enabled him to be more calmer. The quietude was there. So a few things that was happening, the sense of quietude or the frequency was starting to come lower. That means the frequency of the material world. He was retreating back to that inner force, greater awareness, greater memory, and the stronger the body became. So that intensive tapas focused, and gave him a lot of clarity on issues. And what is really interesting is that that enabled him to cognize the creator, the vibration of the creator, and also the creation much more better. And he intensified his work even further as his mind became more quieter, more sharper, deeper, and also his body became more stronger to be able to withstand that intensity. And he started researching and developing himself, and he himself, the R&D that he put in, so he transformed his mind, intellect into a laboratory of exploration. He explored the depth of his mind. He explored all the thoughts, the why thoughts were coming in, how to slow down the thoughts, how to stop the thoughts, how to introspect the thoughts, the sources of the thoughts, the experiences. And he was able to understand that everything starts with himself. And he started realizing that as the mind became more quieter, as the frequency became more subtler, he realized that this material world, with all its frequency, is actually a manifestation of a more subtle, we can call it body or substratum. And this is when he started realizing that the material world, matter and energy, can be transformed into light, and everything that we are as matter and energy are light. And it's not surprising, they are all anchored on electromagnetic fields. And he understood that he was able to experience this matter body into a electromagnetic field. This is what Kundalini is, a manifestation of this vibration. And there's light, that light is nothing but photons, which is essentially electromagnetic fields from electrons, right? So he's able to see his body in light form, and a more subtler version was the vibration. And we see that this vibration is known as strings, string theory. And he was able to go, as the mind became more quieter, he was able to go at a much more subtler level. He was able to understand there is a cosmic intelligence which he calls I, and which has got infinite potential. And going deeper than that, he was able to transcend that to a state of what he calls Irul, a higher order continuum. So he realized that this body that I have, which is matter and energy, that is caught up by cause and effect, at a subtler level, it becomes transcendental. And this is what that R&D and the exploration of that inner cosmos, he says, the inner and the external cosmos, there is no difference. I became that. So as he explored that, he was able to, as he intensified this journey, he was able to get greater awareness, greater enlightenment of this different manifestation of the body, from matter to energy to light to vibrations to cosmic intelligence to finally that Irul state. The greater awareness was there, the higher order continuum, that Irul state, he was able to experience that as the most subtlest state of existence. And he says that all of this is a manifestation of this. Hence, this which we call this higher order continuum or Irul is actually God in its most magnificent face. And he says that this is what I God is. It's a manifestation of all this. So Swamiji's evolution started off with asking the question, pursuing it, with intensity, and doing that internal tapas, internal convergence, and exploring that vibration, and doing all kinds of. Once he got the vibration, he was channeling that into everything that he was doing. He was able to see in a different way, see the world in a very different way. Prior to his, going through this journey, he had lots of questions. And you'll see later on that I'll talk about how by acquiring this I God state or the awareness state, the answers became very, very clear to him. So these were the questions that he had in him prior to his journey. He had lots of questions. And let's look at the questions very carefully. These are questions that many of us had as we were going through this journey, the spiritual journey. Let's take the first question. What were the answers that Mahan came up through this process of that evolution? The first question is, if there is no form for God, how is it that we have form? The first two questions are very important because the first two questions actually tells us about God, in its different forms that we see. Right? So here he sees about, he speaks about form. How can we see God? And in this context, you see that what do we mean by form? So he's looking at the external world and he's seeing, there are many, many multitude of shapes and forms. And, how is it that if we say God is formless, has no form, how is it that we are seeing form? And this is the question that Swamiji had. And you see that after attaining enlightenment, he says, well, that what we see form is one way the universe looks at when my mind was in that state. But as my mind became more and more subtle, I saw that my matter body was actually in a more subtler form. The subtler form was in the form of light, and a subtler form was in the form of Unarvu. The subtler form was in the form of cosmic intelligence, and the most subtlest form is in the form of that higher order continuum. So he realized that when the mind was not aware of it, the mind saw it in one particular way. But when the mind became enlightened and universal, it saw the same body in different forms, from a gross to a more subtle form. And this brings to this question that if he created us, with what did he create? So we see that this is the content, and the fourth question is also relevant. What is the creative substance that he speaks about? So clearly we see that, our body is made out of matter and energy. And the matter and energy comes from light, electrons and all those things. As you go more and more subtle, we see that the entire body manifested from the zero, or from, the I, which the cosmic intelligence, emerged from the Irul. And the cosmic intelligence is what is the source of our energy, matter, all those electrons, protons, and so on. So this creative substance he calls I, or the cosmic intelligence, is the substance in all of us. So which is really interesting now is that if the universe contains all the molecules and carbon and hydrogen and all those things, we should be able to see that in us, in our body. And that's what we see. If you look at all our DNA structure, we have all the elements of this material universe. What about the cosmic intelligence that gave rise to all these things? So Swamiji said, yes, the cosmic intelligence is embedded in our DNA. That's what, made us, have the great race to fertilize the egg. That's what gave us form. That's what makes the baby, the moment it comes out of mother's womb to make noise. That's what makes the baby flip at the very young age. All these are embedded in all of us. Hence, we are all, part and parcel of this divine universe or this cosmic intelligence. So the creative substance is that cosmic intelligence itself. So this is why we see that substance that gives us consciousness and existence of this world, we call it the Atma or the Paramatma. Swamiji calls it the big I. And we see that that is the most subtlest and divine. So that's what gives rise to everything else. Without that, the world would not be meaningful at all. So you see that Swamiji, as he goes deeper and deeper, his understanding becomes more universal. Then question 5, the question is that if he is full, God is full, what is his necessity for an external place to see and worship him? This is a very interesting question. As long as our mind is not full, right, full of, if you see God, if you see the Irul substance, it is formless, dimensionless, timeless, eternal, right? And everything that manifested in this universe is from that. So which means that it is what we call the paripurnam. That means it's wholesome, complete. So that completeness is part and parcel of our own DNA. So here it is. If our mind is wholesome and complete, if our mind is full, then we will see God in every place. But when our mind is not full, we will start seeing God in many, many places. So this is the point that is very important, is that Paripurna Nile, which is the wholesome state of existence, when the mind evolves to that level, we call that mindfulness. The whole idea of mindfulness is that we are not separate from that cosmic intelligence, that big I. So when the mind is full, we see that divinity, God, the universal personality in every place, in every substance, in every being. That's what being universal is. And this is what these 5 questions that Mahan had a lot of searching for that answer. Through this meditative process, through these 4 stages, he was able to realize the answers to this question. And that's documented in the I God book. So we see that Mahan says that, this nothing something by chance, this nothingness, this higher order continuum is what gave rise to everything. The something, the matter and energy. And by chance means there's infinite possibilities. This is Swamiji's way of invoking quantum physics, which I covered in my previous satsang. So you see that Mahans, as he was intensifying his meditation, his mind was becoming more and more paripurna, more wholesome, or full, or mindfulness. And he was seeing what he saw separateness, what he saw formless, everything was starting to transform to become more and more universal. And this is what the evolution, the evolution of the mind of a Mahan. So we mean that, so a Mahan's mind is a mind that is full of this, wholesome, divine, substratum. So let's move on to the next set of questions that he had, and let's see how he responds to these questions. So he goes on to say, when he is one, what is the necessity of doing japas and numerous names? And the 7th question is that when he exists as the big, wherefrom does the difference of small and big arise in this world? So if we understood the earlier discussions that we had, when we mean mindfulness, that means we have that completeness or the paripurnam. We see that God also becomes that complete, wholesome, universal. So, and everything that emanates from that is also universal. So we see that everything that we chant is that oneness. Every name is actually depicting that oneness. It is very similar to every river may have a different name, but the river has value because of the water in that river, right? And we see that the DNA of the water, H2O, in river A and river B are the same, though the color may be different, you know, though the contents in the water may be different, but in that subtlest form, H2O is H2O, and they are all traversing to the same ocean, and they all evaporate. The water evaporates, becomes clouds, and comes back into the rivers. So we see that this oneness is actually your H2O in its core DNA. So whether we call it river A or sing of river A or sing of river B doesn't really matter. It suits that occasion then, that river is river A, this river is river B. So whatever we say is Jabba with all the numerous names, we are all speaking about the same thing, but the context may be very different. In the same way, we see that, so this is to answer question 6, that it's all the same. H2O is H2O, but the colors and the composition in the water it's carrying may be very different. It depends on the context. Question 7 is that he says, when he exists as big, wherefrom does the difference come from small and big? The bigness come, we say Mahatan and Mahan's mind is a very big, wholesome, complete mindset. Where do we get these differences from? Again, this comes back to this whole issue of the whole notion of paripurnam, the complete, the mindfulness. When the mind is full, even how much you shake, you would not be able to shake the content in it. It's very similar to you take a bottle of water, and if you have full, there's no bubble in the water, right? And you shake the water, you would not see the water moving. But as long as you have one bubble in there, when you shake the water, you'll see the water moving. So what Swamiji realized is that this question that he had in mind, as long as my mind is not full, I will always see differences. This is small, this is big. When the mind is full, you would not see this difference. This state of the mind of the fullness is called samattua, samattuam, that complete, unperturbed, you don't see the differences. Somewhat like when you are on the ground, you see, this mountain is taller than that mountain, right? You see waves, big waves, small waves. But as you are flying on a jumbo jet, 30,000 feet, as you look down, all the mountains looks the same. And as a matter of fact, when you see the ocean, you would not be able to see the waves. Everything looks that expansive ocean. And this is exactly what happens to a mind that is evolving. As it's getting to a higher and higher altitude, you see that the differences starts disappearing. Again, Swamiji realized this. This is why, he talks about the big eye and the small eye in the description he gives. Question 8 and 9, again, it's about Judgment Day. Are we all going to be judged? Right and wrong, evil and good. Again, Swamiji says that the good and evil is based on, our own values in society, and that values can change over time, right? But for this, so these are all still matter and energy, material. We have laws that in the past was, illegal, but today, we are more accepting. Society is more accepting, so we are able to change. So right and wrong, good and bad, all these things are human qualities that captures all the changes and the values. At the spirit level, at the big eye level, we see that as we become more and more transcendental to this material world, as we become more and more subtle to this material world, this notion of judgment or this notion of good and bad, starts dissipating. For example, you see for Mahans, the people who are, as they go to a higher altitude, the people that do bad and good, at this core level, they are the same. The only difference is that the people who are doing the not so good things are in a state of ignorance, and the way to overcome that is to bring them to the state of enlightenment so that they don't commit these, bad deeds. So again, but at the core, it's the same. Very similar to a river. A river may be pitch black because it's contaminated, it's carrying a lot of debris, but it's carrying it. But at the core of that water, H2O, it is always pristine, right? And the beautiful part is that when that lake or when that river goes to the ocean, all those color, everything disappears. So Swamiji says that as we become more subtle, as we become more complete, as we become more paripurnam, we see that this notion of good, bad, evil all start dissipating. So here he says these are notions that are based on one's experience. As one's experience become more and more enlightened, one will start seeing that they are all that oneness, part of that mindfulness. Again, this notion of paradise and hell, it is society brought in so that it's able to moderate and modulate human behavior. But for enlightened ones like Mahans, they don't worry about paradise and hell. They say that everything exists in me, right? If the entire higher order continuum and the cosmic intelligence is part and parcel of me, what is that to search for paradise and what is that to run away from hell? They are part and parcel of me. So again, Swamiji, speaks about that fullness. Once attaining that enlightenment, he realized that he says there's no such thing as paradise and hell. Everything at that DNA level is that one complete, wholesome, experience. The same thing with Maya. Maya is non-truth or changing substratum. Yes, our material world continuously changes. Our body continuously changes. As our body changes, our experiences changes. That is the physics of the body. We have birth, sustained for a while, we dissolve, happens at the cellular level and at all levels. So that changing substratum, but deep within us, there is something changeless. Swamiji realized that, right? For the train to go, the tracks must be fixed. For us to experience this world, there must be a track that is fixed in us, which is unchanging, right? For the movie to play and for you to see the movie, the screen must be fixed. If the screen is also moving, you would not be able to see the movie, right? So this is what Swamiji is saying. Yes, these changes are part and parcel of this world, which is the three-dimensional with time. We're going to always see the changes that are happening. But that which enables that changing substratum is a changeless, that eternal, timeless, and that is none other than that higher order continuum which Swamiji speaks about, the Irul. So the moment the mind attains that state, that mindfulness state, this notion of Maya and truth all dissipates. Everything is that oneness, right? So yes, we see changes, but these changes are at the bodily level, and maybe to the experience level. But as your mind becomes more deeper and deeper, you see that the mind becomes anchored to the changeless substratum. Hence, Maya, you become transcendental to it. So you see that, that notion of Maya also becomes more enlightened and illumined. So we see that, somebody question to ask is, what is born and what dies, right? We're talking about birth, sustenance. What is it? Yes, body goes through that evolution, right? Our body is made out of all the things in this universe. Everything that we eat, we sustain for a while, we dissolve. So this notion of what dies, what is in you that is not perishable? The body is perishable. There is something in us that is not perishable, right? That something is that Irul that Swamiji talks about, that cosmic intelligence that gave rise to our universe. So what in you is unchanging, right? So again, So if we are that unchanging, then that must be the truth, right? Maya is changing. Maya means things that are continuously changing. So if the mind is fixed on the changing world, it gets caught up in that, Maya. If the mind is anchored onto the changeless substratum, the mind becomes transcendental to that Maya world. So again, Swamiji, you see the way how Swamiji is thinking now as he became more and more enlightened. In question 12, Swamiji says that, if man's creation is the greatest, are we the greatest? He's asking this question. What is in us that is greatest? He says, it cannot be our body. There are creatures and animals that are much more stronger than us. So we cannot be greatest. There are animals that are smarter than us. They can sense problem way before human beings, right? So he asks, what is greatest? We as Homo sapiens, are we the greatest? Yes, we have intelligence. So do other, creatures. So the question then, Mahan goes deeper to look at this answer. What in man is the greatest? What is it in man that is the greatest? Does this exist in other species? So we see that the human body has some greatness, but also has weakness, right? The same thing with the human mind. The human mind that is anchored on the body will always be finite, limited, transitory. But when the mind becomes anchored on this higher order continuum, which is eternal, timeless, dimensionless, formless, we see that the mind becomes universal. So deep within human beings, it is not the body that is the greatest. It is the mind that is being inspired to know it is that Irul, And when it's in that state, it is the greatest state because it is the state that is unperturbed by this material world. You see? And this exists in every species, not just in human beings, because everything in this universe is imprinted with that. So at that level, everybody is one. This is what the mindfulness, that samatva means. So he says, respect everything, respect everyone. So you see a Mahan would always have tremendous respect for nature and other people and other beings, especially the people that are vulnerable and unable to attain this. This is why this Mahan, he did not, give this initiation and teaching in 5-star hotels or 6-star hotels. He went to the most poorest neighborhoods, the most poorest place, so that he says that to give them this knowledge will lift them significantly and make a big difference in their lives. And the final question he goes on to ask is that, it is said that man is the greatest of all, can live permanently without death. So this is when in his journey as he was exploring. If so, who has lived up, to this date without death? So he's looking at the human body. And he says that how long can the human body live? Somebody can live up to 100, 120, 130, 140 years. As you get higher and higher, the probability is very low. So he's asking, that, but scriptures say, and many things say, the eternal life, no death. Who has achieved this? And who is the greatest of this? And this is the answer that comes as Mahan goes through. He says that, yes, the body goes through death. There's nobody can live above, a certain level. Everybody has got a lifespan. But there is something within the body that is transcendental to time, right? In our universe, 3-dimensional and plus time. So 4-dimensional time is there. But at the higher level, time is not present. Time is eternal. Only in our universe, time is there. So if you remove time, it becomes timeless. When you are timeless, is there birth and death? So he says, aha, this is what it means, through this meditation, through every day, all of us go to this state in our deep sleep, where time disappears, everything disappears. We are in this blissful state of Irul. And through meditation, Mahan is able to come to that level. And even after meditation and getting that resonation, even while living, you are in that state, right? So here, Mahan then says that what is the greatest that can beat death? It is none other than that mind that is in that state of that higher order continuum, that is transcendental to space and time, right? So he says that is the greatest. That is the Magatana Nila. That is what supreme bliss is, that is transcendental to. And he says, that is the seat of wisdom that I attained. He says, in this, he finally comes to the state that Iru higher order continuum is the ultimate state of existence that gives rise to the cosmic intelligence and everything else. This knowledge would not have been possible if Mahan did not take that inner exploration, that introspection, contemplation, reflection, and the deep tapas. So here, what in man is the greatest? That means that Mahan in them, and eternal. It is that substratum that he talks about is the big I. So we see that Mahan went through that evolution of asking these questions, introspecting, contemplating, and reflecting, and then pursuing this inner journey, learning intensively about transitioning from outside to inside, the intensive tapas and inner exploration that opened up new channels of exploration, the entire cosmos within himself and the cosmos around him. And he attained that I God state. And beautifully he says in Tamil, Yettada tatparatte yetti yetti utpuramai utru utru noka noka ipparamum apparamum ega paraparamum innul nanadinde. That utru utru noka noka is actually that the second step of that intensive tapas, and he realized that the inner cosmos and the external cosmos are one, and I attained that state of realization, the higher order continuum. So that intensity is very important, and this is what Swamiji says, that he renounced, say, I renounce my land, my house, my kith and kin, my place and my religion. I avoided giving birth or taking birth. So in the first passage, he says, I renounce my land, my house, my kith and kin, my place, and my religion. All these are material. So it's retreating from that material world to come to a state of quietude and intensify his tapas. In that state of existence, he understood what this higher order continuum. He says, I avoid giving birth, birth or taking birth. So he was transcendental. I avoid becoming a corpse. Neither do I die. At will I remain, and at will I end. It says that because I have attained the seat of wisdom, that cosmic intelligence that is aware that it is a manifestation of the higher order continuum. So in this exploration, Swamiji discovered the theory of nothing and the theory of everything. By discovering the theory of nothing, which is that Irul or higher order state of existence, he was able to discover all that manifests. Everything that manifests comes from that. And this is what the theory of nothing and everything. So in this, Swamiji says that, if you read it very carefully, when the human mind attains a state of nothingness, the Irul, the higher order continuum, the most subtle version of the material universe, the most subtle version of the wants and desire, it becomes aware of the substratum that gave rise to everything, will not be perturbed by the material universe. It becomes a silent observer of the workings of the material universe, but not be impacted by the forces therein. So you're not running away. It is part and parcel of this material universe, in a silent way, but it's, part of that experience. He says in the state of nothingness, it attains the seat of wisdom, the wisdom knowledge of being aware of everything. Hence, the understanding of this Mahan's mind is that this state of nothingness leads to everything. Nothing manifests everything. So the whole idea of this Mahan is that he had lots of questions. He put in the effort, he was not distracted. He intensified his tapas. He was able to unlock the secrets of himself the nature within him, the nature around him, and he was able to converge to understanding everything. This is what the Mahan's mind is, the mind of a Mahan. If we all walk in this journey, we all can attain this state of, Mahan-like mindset, this wow mindset that this Mahan has shown. And he's beautifully documented this in this manual called I God. Sandosham.